Now, I know that the title of this video is not one that immediately instills confidence and excitement in anybody who is interested in coming over to Japan. But I assure you, the purpose of making it is not to discourage you, and is in fact, I hope by the end of the video, to inspire people with greater clarity why they might want to come to anywhere like Japan, to live in a foreign country. I think this topic can be universally discussed, basically. And so it's all about aligning your motives, understanding your motivations, and crushing whatever self-delusion you might have created for yourself in creating whatever goals that it is that you have. And I think it's no mystery at all that a lot of us fall victim to escapism in our lives. And not all escapism is bad. Sometimes we just need to blow off some steam, watch a movie, read a book, go wherever we need to go in our heads to release that stress valve that's on us. But escapism can become a really, really unhealthy thing when we create a sort of idealized reality of how things might be in the face of how they actually are. And I think that that's something incredibly tempting for us to do when we look at working in a foreign country, a country like Japan. But like I say, this could be universally discussed for having any sort of international work experience that you might set out on, and could be applied to any of them for the sort of ways that we delude ourselves. So it's all about aligning your motives and understanding them, where really asking the question, why is it that I'm doing something? Am I doing it as a form of escapism? And have I identified why in many ways that could be false? Or am I doing it for really healthy, positive reasons at the end of the day? So I'll go into detail now to talk about that. So it's this idea, this mistake I think people make between thinking that something being culturally different will mean that the underlying humanity of that place is somehow fundamentally different. And it's not. So when people are having issues in their own country, say they have issues with people, say they have issues with companies, they might look at a place like Japan or any other foreign country because it's culturally different and make the mistake of thinking that those sort of things that they struggled with back home won't exist there anymore because that culture doesn't suffer from those same things. So while Japan is entirely different from the culture that I come from, I would say in Japan and all around the world, for better, I think, actually, there's a shared underlying humanity that exists, but it creates all the same problems no matter where you go, and that turns the act of going to Japan to leave it hoping that you won't find your problems in Japan an act of escapism. So what exactly am I talking about? We'll break this down really, really simple. It's that if you were having social anxiety because of all the people that you had to come in contact with in your home country, if you think that it'll be different in Japan because culturally there are more polite people, you couldn't be any more wrong. It's just that under that layer of cultural politeness, there's still good guys, there's still assholes, there's still wonderful people, there's still horrible people. And so you're going to run into the same problem. And in fact, this can be really, really bad because now you're in a place where there's other sort of social anxieties that can intensify the problem that you once had when you were in your home country. For example, the most obvious being language. So at least in your home country, if a problem you had was with people, you could defend yourself in your native language and to some degree to protect yourself. Whereas if you come to Japan, you won't have that same luxury, and you can either find yourself being isolated socially, even more so than you were at home, or in some really, really awkward social situations where you don't know how to find your way out of them because you lack the ability to express yourself with clarity. Now, that's one example of people. Assholes are here in Canada, assholes are here in Japan, unfortunately. The next thing I would go on to talk about in this same way that you need to wake yourself up to is if you've had really, really bad negative experiences in companies. So say, for example, you've been in a company that you see really abuses their employees, doesn't appreciate them, and has all these different really bad business practices that have made you want to go somewhere else where you've seen that things are done differently. And again, you have this veneer of culture in Japan where you'd say, oh, they have a collectivist culture, they're more group oriented, and so I think that when I go to work over in Japan, I will have this sort of abusive relationship between employer and employee. It will finally be annihilated and gone, and I can go to a country that I won't have to worry about that anymore. And unfortunately, again, this is not the case. It'll just be put through a slightly different lens. You'll have good companies and you'll have bad companies, and you'll have them abusing with a little bit of Japanese style abuse as opposed to the Western style abuse. Maybe more politely you're abused, but the greater point that I'm making is that the strengths and weaknesses, again, that exist here that are in the business world, you're going to find in the Japanese business world as well. So just because the ground that you're standing on is different and different culturally doesn't ever mean that the underlying humanity and the sort of things that prey on our humanity they're not going to change while you're here. So for this first while, it all sounds like doom and gloom. It's like, well, I don't know, now I've got to reconsider. You said at the beginning of the video that I would find some renewed inspiration to come over here. But that's only to begin with, to give you something to reflect on, like, am I doing that? Am I doing that because I have this issue with people or with companies that I work with or whatever else, and I feel that that will be eradicated when I come over to a place like Japan? If you're doing that, identify that problem and, have that reflection in yourself, the strength to identify that that's what you're doing, and then move on to what I would talk to now is the reasons why you should truly come over to Japan. So, or any other foreign country. I'd like kind of the greater spectrum you could talk about this in. So if Japan's not good at fixing you and fixing your problems, then what is it good for? Well, all those things that I've talked about so far that might have increased the sort of anxiety in you, say like language, adapting to a new business culture, good or bad, but adapting to a new business culture, a new place to live, there is no place more so, or actually there is no place other than that we grow in more, which is to challenge ourselves and to put ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And Japan, if it is totally alien to your own culture, when you go to somewhere that's totally different culturally, it totally affords you a whole variety of new ways to get yourself out of your comfort zone. So if you had the right headspace before you came, then this is a great place to come to because you'll have all these unique challenges. You'll have things like language, you'll have things like social, you'll have things like business, all of these different ways to remove yourself from your comfort zone and to grow. I'd interject with a book that if you want to read that kind of touches on this idea of practice, deliberate, focused practice and how we grow outside of our comfort zone. It's called Peak, the Expertise or the Science of Expertise. It kind of dispels this myth of talent and how if you put yourself outside of your comfort zone, anybody could, objectively speaking, become kind of superhuman if they work hard enough and if they practice it something long enough and if they've approached it with the right mindset. I think most of all I want to convey in this video is just the idea that there is no silver bullet for life. There's unique challenges that you can find by going to different places, but never is one place simply the answer. I don't think you would want it to be either, because just like I'm talking about, so much of our success is reliant on challenge. And if you went to a place that cured absolutely every single problem that you had before you actually confronted that issue, then you would never have a chance to grow. It's a really, I beat my head against the wall all the time with this, figuratively, not literally, where battling with the idea of the concept of ignorance is bliss and dealing with that we would like a more comfortable life, but then in that comfortable life we don't become a more evolved person. If you have this right headspace, if you understand truly your motives for coming over is something where you're like, no, I don't need to escape anything. I want to come to Japan because I want to challenge myself, then I think you're doing it in the right way. But if you do come to Japan, if you come to Japan and you can watch this video and kind of think to yourself, holy shit, I was actually going there just because I wanted to get away from where I am now. And it wasn't so much about Japan being really, really interesting and challenging. It's just that Japan wasn't here. Then that would be the wrong reason to do it. And so with that clarity of goals, that I hope that you can get from this kind of personal self-reflection, I hope you're better suited to understand why and when and how you should come to Japan. So those are my reflections here on Tuesday evening before I make dinner. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching this one. I'm going to Yokohama this weekend. I got a buddy visiting from Canada, and we're gonna make a really, really cool video out there. This will be the last video, believe it or not, with my supremely horrible sound, because I finally, big thanks to all the support on Patreon, I've saved some shekels and I'll be able to afford a new Rode mic that I've ordered. Will arrive, I think, tomorrow, and then onwards and upwards to better video quality and sound. All right, one last time to say thank you, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.